In Virginia, during a wrestling match, cybersecurity administrator Daniel turns around when Casper grabs his bag, asking him to slip it off. Daniel refuses to let go and asks about his girlfriend, but an agent points a gun at him and takes the bag away. Outside the building, the agents check the contents of the bag, revealing that Daniel stole many important files. Soon, Daniel is brought out by Casper and discovers that this operation is led by his boss, Noah, the head of a secretive government contractor known as the Wardex Corporation. When Daniel asks about his girlfriend, Noah lets his hostage Jane reunite with him. Then Noah puts on a glove to grab a box from the bag, but it's empty. At the same time, Daniel also puts on a glove and pulls a mysterious device from his pocket, using it as a threat. The agents get ready to shoot, but Noah stops them because they could accidentally activate the device. Daniel retrieves his bag and gets in a car with Jane to escape ignoring Noah's warnings about changing the course of history. Afterward, Daniel calls Hugo, the leader of a team of former Wardex employees who are working on exposing all of the company's secrets. Daniel wants Hugo to send someone to pick up the bag since he only agreed to steal the files. However, Hugo asks him to protect those files until another person is activated too. After the call ends, Daniel destroys the phone so it can't be tracked. Now they need a safe place to hide. At Wardex headquarters, Casper informs Noah that Hugo didn't come to work and his desk was cleaned out. He's also discovered that the second device is missing from deep storage. They only have the third one, which is locked down in the cold room. Moments later, Jane and Daniel arrive at a convent. To Daniel's shock, Sister Mora hugs Jane to welcome her, and he learns that his girlfriend used to be a novice. After Mora takes care of her wounds, Jane privately asks Daniel what's going on. He explains that 8 years ago, he did 19 months in prison for cybercrimes, and when he came out, he was hired by Wardex thanks to his record. 3 months ago, he discovered some important information that he believes should belong to all humanity. The next morning in Kansas, TV meteorologist Margaret tells her boyfriend Jackson that she wants to move again because she hasn't found the place where she's supposed to be. However, Jackson is tired of moving all the time, especially now that he's found work as a musician here. Their conversation is interrupted when a cardinal lands on their table. As if in a trance, Margaret stands up and stares at the bird until Jackson shoos it out. Then Margaret starts looking sick, and Jackson asks if she's okay, only for Margaret to answer in Russian. She doesn't realize she's doing it and only changes back to English when Jackson yells at her to stop. He tries to ask her how she knows Russian, but Margaret leaves for work. On the way to the TV station, Margaret is pulled over by a cop. She looks into his eyes and unconsciously begins describing everything that happened with the officer's family during breakfast. The man is left in such shock that Margaret drives away. At the KCXE studio, the hosts are getting ready to talk about the global state of politics, which is on the verge of a nuclear war. They brought an expert from Korea who can't speak English, and Margaret shocks her coworkers by speaking perfect Korean to him. Once again, she doesn't realize what she's doing. When it's finally time for the weather report, Margaret gets unusually nervous. Suddenly, her English turns into a very strange language full of weird noises. Then she passes out. At Wardex, Noah is arguing with the military and FBI over the loss of information. He's interrupted by an agent who shows him Margaret's clip since it just went viral. The language matches the intel in the company's database, so Noah sends a team to Kansas. At the hospital, the doctor runs several tests on Margaret while Jackson watches with worry. However, they all indicate she's in perfect health. When Margaret sees some strange men in the corridor, the doctor tells her that they're FBI, but Margaret stares at them and concludes they're lying. Then the doctor asks Margaret about the traumatic event that happened when she was 10, but she says she doesn't remember it. She pretends it's fine, but Jackson reveals that she has nightmares about butterflies in a big house. He also says that she sings in her sleep. After the doctor leaves, Margaret stares at the men again. She detects Daniel's name and senses that these guys want him dead, so she asks Jackson to help her escape. On the way home, Margaret receives a call from Hugo, who tells her he's been waiting a long time to meet her. He assures her he's a friend and offers his protection. Suddenly, Margaret recites a phone number and realizes it belongs to Daniel. Hugo tells her to destroy her phone and not to go home, promising that her new ability will guide her to the right place. Margaret puts the phone on the ground and makes Jackson run over it with the car. Then she asks him to take her north because she senses Daniel is there. At the convent, Jane and Daniel are picked up by Santiago. As they drive down the road, the couple has to hide every time they see a Wardex car pass by. Eventually, Santiago drops them off in an abandoned house in the middle of a farm. Daniel notices the animals in the backyard and feels like he can read the emotions in their eyes. Jane demands the rest of the explanation, so Daniel plays her some of the stolen footage on his laptop. It turns out that Ward X has been hiding aliens for the government and experimenting on them since 1973. These experiments put the aliens in terrible pain, and these devastating recordings are what Hugo uses to convince employees to help him expose the truth to the entire world. Jane starts crying, and the alien screams get so bad that Daniel has to close the computer. Jane wonders if it's a good idea to tell humanity about the aliens because they may see them as deities and stop believing in God. She believes that God is who keeps whole civilizations together. An argument ensues, but Noah refuses to listen to any religious argument. In Wardex, Noah makes his team connect him to the third device, which they stole from the aliens. Noah closes his hand around the object and tries to focus on a picture of Daniel, but he only sees him for a second before he has to quit because he almost passes out. Casper wonders if Daniel is an experiencer since the device doesn't work on those people. Then Noah tries again, but with a picture of Jane. This time the device works, and Jane starts feeling dizzy. She fights this strange feeling, but Noah wins, revealing that the device allows him to take control of her. He moves her arms to test it before letting her regain consciousness, and a terrified Jane immediately starts praying. At the same time, Daniel is outside talking to Hugo, who sends him the viral video claiming this is the person they've been waiting for. Daniel doesn't realize she's talking in an alien language. He just hears, "Don't be afraid of what you don't know." A surprised Hugo tells him that Santiago will pick him up to take him to Kansas in the morning. At that moment, the plants around Daniel start moving to form crop circles. In the house, Noah communicates with Jane thanks to their mind link. He asks for her location, so Jane pushes her crucifix into her hand, forcing her body to wake up. Unfortunately, Noah quickly reappears and asks about her location again. Jane doesn't know where she is, but she's forced to tell him about the convent and the road they took when they left. Her crucifix makes her hand bleed, and she has to drop it. Jane's directions allow Noah's team to find the house. Using the device is making him very ill, and the medical team worries. But Noah keeps talking to Jane, saying that the truth will destabilize the world. If Daniel tries to escape again, she must stop him. Jane tries to refuse, so Noah forces her to grab a knife. On the road, Margaret has a sudden feeling and desperately takes Jackson's phone to call Daniel. She tells him that they are going to his location to kill him, and he mustn't return to the house because Noah dove on Jane, although she doesn't know what that means. Jackson is tired of hearing all this nonsense and takes his phone back before she can say more. A confused Daniel realizes the call was true when he sees cars in front of the house and decides to carefully sneak around. Once all the agents have left their cars, Daniel gets inside one and tries to drive away. The agents hear him and open fire, causing him to panic and hit 2 trees before he finally reaches the road. As the men get back in their cars to follow him, Daniel crashes into the house to rescue Jane before returning to the road. During the chase, Noah controls Jane again, making her pull a knife from her sleeve. At that moment, one of the cars hits Daniel's vehicle from behind, causing Jane to drop the knife and weakening the link. Jane grabs the knife but hesitates to move because Daniel keeps saying her name. A desperate Jane fights against Noah's control, and the knife ends up stabbing her crucifix wound instead. She screams in pain, and Noah feels it too, causing him to drop the device and end the connection. The team surrounds Noah when he collapses from a seizure while Casper picks up the device with his bare hand. It turns him invisible, only to return when he drops it and immediately passes out. On the road, the agents open fire, destroying many windows in Daniel's car and even a tire. As he tries to keep control of the car, he crosses a bridge rather clumsily, and the agents don't see the roadblock until it's too late. The front vehicle crashes and blocks the way for all the others. As Jane realizes what happened, she clings to Daniel in tears, but he assures her it's not her fault and that Noah did it. He then makes a turn onto an alternate road, but unfortunately, he has to stop the car on the edge of a cliff. They can hear the agents approaching, so the couple puts a rock on the gas pedal and lets the car fall off the cliff before running away. When the agents arrive, they see the vehicle in the river and start organizing an underwater search. At a gas station, Margaret tells Jackson that she finally knows this is where she's supposed to be and compares it to the flow of his music. She also says they need to go east now to find Daniel. Jackson pretends to be cooperative and enters the store where people are going crazy for supplies because war is coming. He secretly calls the doctor and gives her the address, asking her to pick Margaret up since she's getting worse. When Jackson comes out, he discovers that Margaret and his car are gone. A child in another vehicle gives him a message from her. She loves him, but she's going east. In the evening, Daniel and Jane hide in a motel, and Daniel can't stop writing math equations in the motel's notebook. He calls Hugo to tell him that he now remembers terrifying animals looking at him and he couldn't look away until they did it first. Daniel suspects that Hugo recruited him for other reasons besides his math skills, and Hugo confirms it, but he refuses to explain. When Daniel asks about his missing childhood memories, Hugo promises it'll all become clear soon and mentions the letters KCXE. Afterward, Daniel hides everything in the room that contains the motel's name in case Noah acts again. When Jane comes out of the shower, he shows her the viral video. She says she only hears gibberish, so Daniel admits he can understand it as math that turned into English in his head. That's the equations he's been writing. Before they go to sleep, Jane asks him to tie her to the bed since she can't be trusted. In the middle of the night, Noah takes control of Jane again. She can move her leg just enough to poke Daniel's hand since he's fallen asleep with the equations in his hand. This paper shows Noah the motel's name and address. Soon, both Santiago and the agents arrive. All the lights awake Daniel, who immediately unties Jane so they can hide in the bathroom. Then he gives her money and the box with the device before making her escape through the window. The agents break in and capture Daniel, who fails to defend himself. Seeing all this, Santiago informs Hugo on the phone before driving away. In the morning, Daniel is strapped to a chair in a lab in a decommissioned Air Force base in Missouri. Noah wants him to share the location of the device and all the names of the people helping Hugo, so he gets an injection of truth serum ready. At the same time, Margaret also arrives at the base and a guard tries to stop her. With her power, she tells him his name, his ID code, and today's password, so he lets her pass. At the next checkpoint, she uses the same password on another man and pretends that she was summoned by Noah, so this guard agrees to guide her to the lab. When Margaret bursts in, she and Daniel share a special look. Noah immediately grabs her, so she manipulates his mind to make him think he's looking at his late wife. Casper tries to pull Margaret away, but Noah immediately attacks him, telling his team to leave her alone. Then Margaret holds Daniel's hand and they realize they know each other. They leave the lab together and a guard tries to stop them. So Margaret transforms into his dead grandfather to make him step back. Several guards try to stop them next, yet Margaret keeps using the same trick over and over until they reach the car to escape. On the road, Margaret explains to Daniel that she can learn everything about a person and mentions his time in prison. She tells him that she gained this power after she was visited by a bird, and Daniel guesses it was a cardinal. He shares that when he was 20, he was visited by a cardinal in college, and suddenly he became a math genius. 8-bit binary data is like English to him. Daniel felt very strange and lost all his friends, so he was alone until he met Jane. Suddenly, Casper hits their car with his and starts pushing it toward the tracks, where a train is currently passing by. They can't jump out because Margaret is standing on the brakes, which is the only thing preventing the crash. Casper pushes harder and the side of their car gets stuck on the train, so it's dragged along the tracks. Daniel kicks the windshield until it comes off. Then the duo climbs on the hood to try to reach the train stairs. At that moment, Casper drives near them and opens fire, but all the shots fail and he runs out of ammo. As Daniel manages to reach the stairs, Margaret starts slipping off. There's another train coming, so she's forced to make a risky jump. Thankfully, Daniel catches her and the other train only destroys the car. After sneaking inside the train through the roof, Margaret has a panic attack. She hates the feeling of her hands trembling because it reminds her of her father's Parkinson's. Daniel talks to her to keep her anchored to reality and puts her hands on a string instrument he finds in the train, which finally helps her calm down. Sometime later, Noah takes over Hugo's mind and asks if Daniel is an experiencer, which Hugo confirms. Noah guesses that an alien code named In Vivo 17 told Hugo to recruit Daniel and reminds him that their interest can't be trusted. However, Hugo has learned that empathy is an evolutionary advantage and reveals he helped In Vivo 17 escape 5 years ago. When Noah calls him mad, Hugo says that Noah is the one who went mad after losing his wife. Noah may see the truth about the aliens as a virus, but Hugo thinks it'll establish order across the entire world. Suddenly, Hugo's team comes looking for him. He tries to kick them out, but it's too late. Noah has returned to the lab and is looking for those team members in the employee database. As soon as they identify them, they start tracking their phones. Meanwhile, Jane calls Maura to ask for her guidance on the subject of extraterrestrial life. Maura points out that the Bible doesn't deny the existence of aliens and that they wouldn't shake her belief in God. Then, Jane asks her to search the internet for the meaning of KCXE. After leaving the train, Jane and Daniel walk down the road. Daniel asks Jane if she can see the memories he's lost, and her power makes a fox appear. Suddenly, they're surrounded by firefighters and they panic, but it's just Santiago and his team in disguise. They use a machine to confirm they aren't under Noah's control before taking them to the city. At Hugo's headquarters, Margaret is shocked to find a copy of her childhood home. As she freaks out, a woman holds her hand and crosses herself. However, the idea of being a deity makes Margaret freak out even more, and she runs to hide in her house, where she has a breakdown. Afterward, she grabs a picture of her family and enters the room, noticing how all the details match her memories. Hugo comes to explain that he built this to create a passage to the experience she had when she was a child, revealing that Daniel shared it with her. At first, Margaret refuses to revisit the traumatic day, but Hugo convinces her to do it because it'll give her purpose and enlightenment. After the team connects the duo to their machines, Hugo brings out one of the 3 devices and makes Daniel and Margaret hold it at the same time. Margaret looks around the room and remembers the night she had been singing in bed when suddenly a group of animals appeared in her room. Daniel can see this too, and he freaks out, but Hugo assures him it's fine because the aliens present themselves as animals to calm humans. The memory shows little Margaret following the animals into the forest, where she found the house that now haunts her adult dreams. When she entered it, she was assigned a table next to little Daniel, who was having a panic attack. Margaret grabbed his hand to calm him down back then, and they repeat the gesture now as they remember everything. Then the aliens held their faces while special devices gave them their complementary powers. In the present, the device shuts down and the memory ends. However, Margaret reactivates it and sees herself as an adult on the table, reconnecting to the aliens to stabilize their abilities. Now the duo is ready to act. At that moment, Noah and his men surround the building. Margaret grabs the alien device and uses it to make the house invisible with the team inside. When the enemies break in, they use a scanner to confirm that there are people here. Margaret tells the team to run through the back door, so Noah makes his men follow the sounds of running and the splashes on the water. However, when the agents run ahead, they end up crashing into the house. As Margaret struggles to keep control of the device, the whole group boards the fire truck. The agents try to follow the glimpses of the device's light, only to crash into the truck too. Invisible team members move the fallen men out of the way before Santiago turns on the truck siren. The noise makes the enemies run away, and the truck manages to leave the building, running over several cars in the process. Once they're far enough, Margaret lets go of the device, which quickly disintegrates. Moments later, the team makes it to the KCXE studio. Using her power, Margaret convinces her boss to let her do a special transmission, and soon the whole crew is helping. Daniel begins uploading all the footage from the stolen USB sticks to the satellite feed, and Hugo welcomes a truck with a mysterious delivery. When Noah's men arrive, they quickly infiltrate the building and cut down the power before destroying the generators. Then Noah guides his agents to the main studio to try to kidnap Margaret. However, Jane arrives first and gives her the last device. Margaret uses it to power the entire building, and the bad guys have no choice but to step back. Now the transmission finally begins, and Margaret announces that this is Disclosure Day. After explaining what the government has been doing to aliens for decades, Daniel plays the footage. Since it's on the satellite, stations around the country confirm it's real and interrupt other shows to play it as well. Soon, people all over the world are watching the horrifying videos on their phones, and the soldiers who were getting ready for war are frozen in their spots. The footage shows several years of amazing spaceships arriving on Earth, and the US government always kidnapping the aliens for their experiments. People are crying as the last video ends, but the transmission isn't over. Hugo brings the special delivery to the cameras, revealing it's the alien he helped escape 5 years ago. This alien touches Margaret's and Daniel's shoulders before whispering something into Daniel's ear. Attorney translates it for Margaret, who moves to the camera to share the message with the world. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.